If you look at the nature of what is called problems, the first thing that becomes very clear is the frequency at which they arise. Some are very obvious and some are very subtle. But there is a flow of what would be called problems if there is keen witnessing throughout the day. But the thing is, it can be so incredibly liberating to see what a problem really is. Like when someone blames you. There's a problem. It is simply thought complexes. All problems are conflicting thought processes. There has to first be identification that I am separate, I am the body, I am the doer, in order for them to appear. And then there must be the following, an identification with the thoughts as being real. They are always based on the imprint of the past, and they are always projecting into the future. And they run almost a theme in the life for most people. But it is all imagination. It is all conditioned imagination. There is never a problem in the feeling of the eternal now. In truth, the only place you have ever lived. And yet there is this constant barrage of thought patterns that create the experience of my problem. And if they are looked at, the conditioned mind will speak of something new, but if you notice the mechanics of it, it is never the case. There are new props, new pawns, new players, but the nature of the conflict is only a repeat. If it is taken down to the fundamentals. Furthermore, whichever way it goes has absolutely no impact on you. It may seem like it impacts the character, but the character ultimately is recognized to be, in fact, the source of the problem. If you look to see who you are, foregoing the habit of living in past memory, having no information to project the future, and just exploring, it is impossible to find something that defines who I am. it is impossible to find a problem. It can be very helpful to take time simply to notice the conditioned process of the mind's constant churning of its perception of problems. And it is so liberating in the recognition that in the deepest truth, there is no such thing. There never has been. There is simply no such thing as a problem. It appears as a dream. It has the role of the potential of drawing the attention into the myth of the character defining me. In the simple recognition that there is no problem, there cannot be suffering, because suffering is the result of being brainwashed into the belief of a problem. In the recognition that there is no problem, there is nothing to attain. And then immediately the taste of what has never been touched by all of the so-called problems, no matter how big they may have seemed, is revealed to be. Unstained, unaltered, unaffected. If this body is in major pain, physically or emotionally, and the attention falls into it, if the attention does not fall into it, it is not experienced. It is not a keeping away from, it is feeling yourself equally everywhere. It is just not falling into the habit of the contraction of awareness into what is behind the eyes, which is driven by conditioned fear. Subtle arising of the mind's story of a problem. But even if this occurs, and there is the experiencing of the pain, whether it is emotional or physical, and there is simply not buying the perpetuation that this is a problem, there is no suffering. In circles like this, the big problem is the experience of re-identification, being identified as the separate character. But there is a wisdom that guides everything. If it is impossible in the moment, which is where you live, ever to find a separate one, how can there be a separate one who can influence anything? It is all part of the myth. But there is a wisdom that is eroding all ignorance. And this erosion process occurs through the expansion and contraction, freedom from identification. It begins to wear something away. There is no job, there is no problem, nothing is ever out of place. It is possible to just relax, even if the conditioned mind is not relaxed. And if conditioned mind is not relaxed, and there is the identification, that is who I am, and there is the experience of efforting, that is no problem either. It is doing something. In retrospect, it is so easy that every appearance in the mind of a problem that has ever occurred in the life has brought you to where you are. There begins to be this trust. There begins to be a recognition that there never ever has been any such thing as a problem outside of the conditioned story of imagination. So freeing. And then there was all this ease. Not that the ease appears, the ease is your nature. It is the imagination that pulled the attention from your nature that is released. And then your nature comes shining through. And there is this radiant joy that is not because of something. It is who you are. Eventually, even the prospect of the death of the body is not perceived as a problem. And we are graced to